friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Johanna and welcome to my cozy book space. So for today's video, I'm going to be doing my June wrap up. I read 18 books this month, so let's get right into it. I'm going to go ahead and start by listing off the books that I read in either reading vlogs or weekly vlogs. I will definitely link those up in the cards for you guys, as well as down below in the description box. I don't want to go too in depth in my reviews for these books because I did do that in those vlogs, so definitely check them out. I have so much fun filming them. First three that I read for a reading vlog were Savor It by Tara Dewitt. This is a small town single dad romance. I truly fell in love with Sage and Fisher in this one. Then we have The Gods Forbid by Rory L. Scott. This is a fantasy romance, villain redemption, slow burn perfection romance. I read that one in that vlog as well. Then I ended up reading Leather and Lark by Bryn Reaver. This is the second book in the Ruinous Love trilogy. This is a dark rom-com romance. Then for a single dad's romance reading vlog, I read In a Jam by Kate Canterbury. This is a small town single dad always been you romance. Then I ended up reading The Nanny by Lana Ferguson in that vlog as well. This is my first ever book by Lana Ferguson and it won't be my last. Again, this is a single dad nanny romance. The spice was immaculate. Then in a weekly vlog, I did end up reading King of Sloth by Anna Huang. This is Sloane and Xavier's romance. Sloane is Xavier's PR manager. This is definitely reverse Grumpy Sunshine. It was so good. Then for my LGBTQ plus weekly vlog, I read 5 books, one of them being a novella called Daddy's Perfect Ballerina by K.L. Mann. This is an MM romance. It is also a single dad romance. Then I also ended up reading Slow Shift by Nazaria Andrews. This is an MM romance. It is a shifter romance. It is a slow burn. It is friends to lovers. It was amazing. Then I ended up reading Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. This is an FF romance. This is Sister's Best Friend, and it's also very cozy small town. Then we have Ache by Marley Valentine. This is an MM romance. This is a forbidden romance. This is an angsty romance. If you like that, this one might be for you. Then last book for that LGBTQ plus romance reading vlog, I read Some Girls Do by Jennifer Dugan. This is an FF romance and it is a YA contemporary romance. Decided to switch it up there towards the end. Never read a YA contemporary, or at least in a really long time I haven't. So definitely check out that weekly reading vlog. Now let's dive into the books that I read outside of those reading vlogs or weekly vlogs. First one being Agnar's Teacher by Jennifer Wood. This is a orc romance. I ended up DNFing this at 38% just because I didn't like where the story was going. So we have Piper. She is kidnapped by aliens and she is dropped off in this orc planet along with a handful of other human women. Agnar is an orc and he immediately realizes that Piper is his fated mate. He is trying to give her space, so he goes out into the woods to cut down some trees. Piper is going on a walk to kind of clear her head because there's no way for her to go back to her home, and she is trying to figure out how she's going to get her anxiety meds. So she's going on this stroll to clear her head, and Agnar accidentally drops a tree on her. In the process of him helping her get out of this tree, they have a spicy good old time. The spice was good. I enjoyed it. I just thought it happened super quickly. I also didn't feel like the anxiety representation was good, but that's my personal opinion, and maybe the anxiety rep would have been handled a lot better after the 38% mark. But the way the story was going to go was that Agnar and Piper were going to go on a road trip to find anxiety meds in this orc planet. They do have them, but obviously they're not the same thing, but they kind of do have a medication for it. I just put it down, never picked it back up, didn't care enough. Then I ended up picking up Born to be Bound by Addison Kane. This one I gave it 3.5 stars. Also could be a 4-star, but I think I'm gonna stick with 3.5 because I really did enjoy this. So I believe I got this for free, and I think it is still free. It is a series about the same couple, which I did not know, but obviously the first book ends on a cliffhanger, and I am interested in picking up the other books, but the books are not on Kindle Unlimited, so I would have to purchase the books, and I think there's like 4 or 5 after the first one, so I just haven't bit the bullet yet, but I am interested. I just don't know when I'm gonna get back to this. Anyways, we have our hero Shepard and our heroine Claire. So So Shepard is an alpha. He was in a alpha prison. He ends up escaping and he just wreaks havoc in this town, in this city that Claire lives in. And he's just basically now ruling over everybody. It is a post-apocalyptic world, or at least it's giving that vibe. And then we have our heroine Claire. She is an Omega and she has been seeking refuge with a bunch of other Omegas, and they are all starving and they have been struggling with their heats. So they have been taking heat suppressants, which later on we find out that they aren't heat suppressants. They actually are medication to enhance their heat and make them go into heat faster. So it's a very gray world that we're living in. So Claire is picked or volunteered, either or, to go to Shepard and beg for food because Omegas are dying. She takes all the precautions to not be smelt like an Omega and get attacked by alphas. But with all that being said, when she goes up in front of Shepard, she ends up going into heat because she has been taking this medication that she thought was helping her. And because of this, Shepard ends up like killing multiple alphas to keep her. And so because she's going into heat, she goes into heat and she obviously is in heat with Shepard, and he actually forces the mating bond on her. He actually bites her. He could have easily just helped her through her heat and not bonded them together, but he does end up doing that. So there's definitely a lot of dubcon in here, a lot of it. We really have a morally gray hero. He is definitely the villain of this first book. And we have, it's the Stockholm syndrome, but it's like, what is that trope? What is that trope? I can't remember that trope. Oh, captor captive. I couldn't remember, but it's giving very much that because Shepard is not willing to let Claire go, and she does escape one time. She's gone for a while, but then she ends up getting betrayed and she is sent back to Shepard, and she is definitely forced to stay in a room. Shepard definitely forces himself on her multiple times because he wants to get her pregnant. That she is like slowly, you know, you could say it's Stockholm syndrome, but she's slowly like accepting her fate, and she's saying like, you know, he's not so bad with me, like it could be worse. So she's like slowly giving a little bit of herself, a little bit. Then cheating happens. If cheating is not your thing, this is not for you. At least the first book. I don't know how many other times he might cheat on her, but there's this other alpha woman who comes in and is like threatening Claire. That scene was so horrid. I literally was like literally a stab to the heart. Like when the hero did that, I was like, I don't know if I could ever forgive you. But there's so many books after that, you know what I mean? And after this happens, Claire is like, absolutely not. Like this is the last straw. I can't believe he actually did that. I can't believe I was actually giving in. And so she ends up being able to run away once more. And this is the cliffhanger that we're left with. The thing is that she ends up meeting up with this other character and they're like doing this plan to take Shepard down. So I'm also kind of interested on how that's gonna go, because now it's giving enemies to lovers. It was kind of doing that at the beginning too, but now it's like for real because she wants to take him down. So I'm so intrigued. But the thing about this, that the writing is beautiful, but the writing is also very jarring because I feel like Addison Kane doesn't do transitions very well. I don't know if it's just me, but like I notice it and it takes me out of the story, and it took me out multiple times, like where I have to like take a step back and be like, oh wait, what was happening before and what is happening now? Because that transition between then and there is so abrupt to read. But that's not to say that her writing is not beautiful, but there's like page breaks and sometimes there's no page breaks, and it's just difficult to flow in the story when things are happening and we don't know when those things are happening and like all of that. So the writing, the transitions, just not for me. It sucks because it's so good, but it's like so toxic. It's so good because it is toxic, but I am definitely interested in continuing this series. I just don't know when I'm gonna get to it. Okay, then I ended up picking Bad Girl by Ella Good. I gave this one 3 stars. This is between our hero Warren and our heroine Layla. So Layla's father ends up committing suicide, and Layla ends up meeting up with her father's brother, her uncle, and her uncle has been telling her all of these bad things about Warren and saying that it was Warren's fault that her father committed suicide. So they come up with this plan, and her uncle makes her go undercover into Warren's company to take him down, and it goes from there. It was entertaining for what it was. The spice was really good. Obviously, we have a good and evil here. The hero is instantly obsessive on his knees for the heroine, so I loved it. I gave it 3 stars. Then after that, I ended up reading Close to the Edge by Cassie Mint. This is the second book in that trilogy that Cassie Mint is currently putting out. We have our hero Ash and our heroine Tess. Tess is the sister from the hero of the first book. Ash Ash is best friends with the hero in the first book. This is brother's best friend or best friend's little sister. So Ash and Tess actually see each other outside of Tess's work. She is a waitress at a bar and she sees him. They have this instant connection. They've never felt for anybody like they do for each other, but obviously they don't see each other after that. And then Tess goes to dinner at her brother's. That's where she sees Ash again, and this is kind of when they realize what they are to each other, and it goes from there. There is definitely a lot of pining because it is Cassie Mint. She does amazing pining. The steam was really good as well. I will say I gave this one 3 stars. It could have been a 4. It really could have, but it was a 3-star for me because I didn't like the way that the first steamy scene happened. They are dual virgins. They end up getting caught, and I did not like how that whole scene went down. That it was just so pointless, especially because it is their first time and they have to stop like in between. It makes no sense to me. So yeah, I gave it 3 stars. It was good for what it was, but the steam, it lagged a little bit there for me, but I really did love Ash and Tess. Then I ended up reading Can You Handle It by Whitney G. Actually, I didn't even read it. I DNF'd it as 61%. While I was reading this, I felt like I had read this before. I might have DNF'd it before, but it wasn't on my Goodreads, so I don't know what that deja vu shit was all about. Basically have a heroine who is older than the hero, so we have a reverse age gap. We have a heroine that is really stubborn. She really doesn't want to get with the hero because the hero is a little brother of her best friend. For some reason, I also found the writing slightly annoying, and then I also didn't understand why the hero was so obsessed with the heroine. So the heroine gets cheated on by her fiance. She goes to this retreat, and then she sees the hero there because he makes a lot of money. He's like really smart. He came up with his own company, and he figures this is his opportunity to finally go after our heroine. And I just felt like the heroine would have just talked to her best friend, because her best friend in this book seems like she is fine with everything. Listen, she a-okay with all sexual kinks. She is a-okay with her friend doing whatever she wants. Like, she gives that vibe since the beginning. I feel like if the heroine would have just spoken to her friend, that it would have just been fine. And honestly, at this point, I just didn't care enough, so I DNF'd it as 61%. Listen, I am in my DNFing era. If I just find myself not caring or not wanting to pick the book back up, then I will definitely be DNFing, and I did that with this one. So then after that, I ended up reading Faded to the Grizzly by Ariana Hawks. This one was one more that I needed to actually finish this series of not interconnected, they're just all individual grizzly shifter romances. We have a heroine who is from a family of doomsday preppers. Her father has forced his entire family to live in the woods as if the apocalypse has already happened, even though it hasn't. And then we have our hero who is a grizzly shifter. He has been going through it. He was kind of going crazy because he hadn't found his fated mate yet, but then he got a sign from the fates and a vision and telling him that his mate would need all of the finest things in the world. So he like built her a house with all of the best appliances, all the best furniture, with the pool, with the jacuzzi, like anything that you can think of that, like, you know, rich people have. Like all the luxuries in the world, he did that for our heroine. So our heroine's father ends up having her and her brother dropped off in the middle of the woods and see how long it takes them to go back to their house, like find their way back home. This is where the heroine runs into the hero, and it goes on from there. They have a steamy good old time. They are dual virgins as well. I just loved how much the hero took care of the heroine, but the heroine was also not a damsel in distress. Like, she really could hold her own, and I just loved the whole premise of it. I gave it 3.5 stars, rounded it down to a 3 because I enjoyed it for what it was. Last book that I ended up reading in the month of June was Dark Side of the Sun by Addison Kane. I actually didn't read this. I DNF'd this as well. This one I ended up picking up because after I finished that Omegaverse by Addison Kane, I wanted to see her backlist, and this is the only one that was on Kindle Unlimited. So I decided to give it a shot. I was looking for something a little bit on the darker side, but also that would be kind of entertaining. This one is giving historical romance, historical dark romance. The hero is definitely morally gray. Like, he is definitely a villain. And then we have our heroine who is a widower, and she like moves to this town, and this is like where she runs into the hero, and she gives as good as she gets. She's this wild girl. She gives no shits. She is ready to live her life. I loved some parts of it, but again, the writing was so confusing, and I felt like I noticed the writing problems in this one more than I was in the other one, or maybe the other one just kept me more entertained, so I noticed it less. But in this one, girl, I could not do it. So so I had to DNF it because I put it down at some point because my brain literally couldn't handle it. Then I never picked it back up because I knew that how frustrating it was gonna be to pick it back up. So I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna DNF it. It's just not for me. And so I DNF'd it at 42%. I was liking it. I will say that it's not that I was hating it. It was just so abrupt. Like one minute they were having a conversation, and then the next minute they were at this farmer's market, and then this next minute she's like trying to do this secretive deal. The next minute they're in the field doing it. And I'm just like, wait a minute, like what is happening? Listen, the hero, he really had my heart, like, cause he was just crazy, but not crazy, but he was just, you know, he wasn't a good hero, but I loved him for our heroine because she was just, wouldn't take any of his shit, and I just love that dynamic. The writing was just too much, so I ended up DNFing it. Those were all of the books that I ended up reading in the month of June. Definitely don't forget to check out my reading vlogs and my weekly vlogs. I have been loving filming those. Let me know what your best book that you read in the month of June was, and if you don't want to comment any of that, then go ahead and leave me a ballerina shoe emoji down below in the comments. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye guys.